quick agenda, just some spoilers, what we're probably going to do. I want to first kind of walk through an existing sync and existing model that we have. And then we're going to go through and actually break it on purpose and then kind of show you as we run through the application, what things look like when they break, how you actually go about troubleshooting them, and then also maybe some of those reports and some of those other alerting capabilities that Katie mentioned look like. So let's go ahead and start with our model here. I have an existing model that just grabs some list of contacts. We'll see we have grabbing the top 10 of them. I am sorting by random, so I just get 10 random ones each time. But we're syncing into a Salesforce contact list, which expects an email as an ID. So what we're going to want to do here is let's actually go ahead and put in 2 bad records. So I'm also going to shove in something called bad email at email.com, which is, of course, a malformed email address. And then down here as well, down the line, we're going to be syncing these contacts into Salesforce based on some team ID. And I'm going to put in a error number that I know for sure does not exist in our contacts in Salesforce. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save that model here. And I'm going to jump over into the sync now. And in this sync, let's go ahead and kick this off just by running a quick sync. And while that's running in the background there, what I want to do is let's go ahead and talk through what one of these sync reports look like. Now, full transparency, this is currently only available for Salesforce. We are pushing out other destinations really quickly. And this takes a couple minutes to run. So I don't want to have you watch a spinning screen, but this is going to be what a Salesforce, this is what going to be like a dry run report looks like. You'll see the last time I ran this, 9 records that I passed through into Salesforce already existed. So I updated those. Now this is an upsert sync. And then there was one that did not exist. So I created that in there. Really, really valuable and really important because if you ever wanted to test out what was actually going to happen, before you push something into Salesforce, previously you could only just run a test sync that would shove one row into the table. But now this actually lets you do a dry run without actually updating anything. I think in general, tools like Census are a little bit scary to use the first time because whenever you press that sync button, you're actually having downstream effects with your business. So this hopefully just gives you a bit more transparency, a bit more confidence on the cardinality of what's going into the report on the back end. All right, so let's go back here. I think what's probably more compelling actually is as this is running here, let's actually take a look at the APIs that we're running on the back end. So this is the list of API calls that we just made back and forth between Census and Salesforce. Now, right off the bat, I am not an API expert. I'm not a software engineer. I don't pretend to be. I think it's actually probably the core value of Census as a tool is that it allows someone like myself who can't write these API calls himself to actually go forward and make these actions in the data warehouse and inside your data destination like Salesforce without needing to manually build it. However, if you were an API expert and you did want transparency on what was going on, each of these, you can click on them and they'll show you the calls that are being made back and forth. So we take a look at this one right here. Go to the response body. You'll remember that I had a limit 10 at the top and then also added 2 bad records. So here's my 12 records that were processed. And here's 2 that were failed. And those were the 2 rows that we expected to fail, the ones that we broke. The API call above here will actually show you exactly which 2 records broke. You'll see here we have a bad foreign key because this ID was not found. And of course, the email address is invalid because we have a comma instead of a period. Now, this exact table and this exact body will also show up in the sync history over here on the right. When I click the rejected fields, you'll be able to see exactly the same thing that I just showed you. And then also here, you'll see that I ran a report earlier, took about 2 minutes to run and generate. And you'll also be able to view that report from here. Last quick thing before we kind of hop off of this is right here, you'll see that we did also add a run ID. So keep this in mind. It's not very useful right now, but down the line in a moment when I jump into the reporting piece of it and actually going through the data warehouse sync logs, this is going to be really valuable to jump back and be able to see exactly which sync and which run was breaking. Now, I know a lot of folks already know about the alerts that we have on the back end. For this particular sync, I have set a couple really strict boundaries. So anytime basically anything breaks, I want to be notified of it. I have a Slack integration set up on the back end here, but oftentimes you can actually change the threshold for this. So you might not be able to see the dropdown. I'm sharing just my window. I know Chrome does some weird things, but let's say you actually expect up to a quarter of records to be rejected. For example, earlier in the contacts, or I was syncing a full list of contacts. Maybe sometimes you do have contacts inside your data warehouse that don't exist in Salesforce, and maybe that's expected. However, if over half of them, if over a quarter of them break or are rejected, then you do want to be notified. And real quick, this is just what a notification of that looks like. Over here inside Slack, you'll see I can receive this notification says something failed, or down here something succeeded. Looks like we got another one here, so that something failed. You'll also be able to receive the same exact body and an email address as well. All right, so let's jump over into maybe what I think is probably the most useful thing or the newest thing with the being able to write logs back to the data warehouse. So because you have the sync logs available in the data warehouse itself, any tool that either reads or writes into the warehouse can leverage that table. So in this case, I have built a dashboard on top of that sync logs table inside Snowflake, inside Looker. So here we're looking at the number of syncs, the number of rejected syncs. You'll be able to see the most commonly rejected reasons. I can see my performance over the last 7 days. So number of syncs and also what percent have been rejected. I can also come down here and see actually the individual syncs that were rejected. Again, these are all just queries directly into that warehouse. This was refreshed 10 minutes ago. I can go ahead and just clear this because I did run that sync recently. So hopefully once this runs through Snowflake in the back end, we did see all these numbers increase a little bit here. And we should see those 2 recent records that I just ran that broke. Now, because this is inside, Looker for this example, but of course, any other tool you use, Tableau mode, whatever you use on the front end that reads off that table, you also have the full suite of capabilities inside the BI tool. So if you're a Looker user, if you're familiar with Looker, you have your alerting capabilities, whereas Census alerts using our API on a per sync or per run level. Looker does alerts more at the warehouse level. So if you want to do something more of an aggregate, saying if this breaks some threshold over 20% in the day, you can get alerted there. You also have Looker's Explorer capabilities, for example, if your end users want to be able to have a window into the backend sync logs that are a bit more user-friendly and a bit more digestible than actually digging through the sync logs. So if an ops person or marketing person say, my email address is my most recent marketing list, didn't get synced over from the warehouse, I want to figure out what's going on, you can hop into here, you can find out why it's not getting synced over. You can also say, oh, maybe there was a spike, so it's expected and then people know it's happening. All right, the very last thing I want to do to tie it full circle is also within Looker here. I can go ahead and click on my link here and then jump back into the sync history that links back into Census. So as an end user, if you had permissions, and it's kind of side note here, not the focus of today's presentation, but we did also recently release access controls. So if say someone was a dashboard user in Looker and they were also a builder inside Census and had permission to view this page, they'd be able to link back into here, see the actual history, and this is where that run ID comes into play. If they see that certain records broke here, you can go track down that run ID, find it in here, and then actually see exactly which sync was breaking for you on the back end and really track that down. Again, all in an effort to provide more transparency and confidence